Welcome to the first. You have a story. If you look back on your life, you've done things for the first time that no one in your family, in your town, in the country has done. This is Dr. Sandi. You have unknowingly paved the way for others without knowing it or even acknowledging it. This is where you tell your story so that those who come after you can walk in your footsteps to build their own firsts. Peggy McHale and I have been ride or die chicks since we worked together in corporate in the early 2000s. We then created, scaled, and sold our marketing and analytics company, Consultants to Go, back in 2016. We still have a company together. It's called Pandi, and it's a holding company of all our publishing assets and workshops. All that to say, I'm still learning about Peggy and the things at which she is first. As it is with so many of us entrepreneurs, she was the first to graduate from college, and so far the first to get a graduate degree. This is all because her mom, Bea, was a tough old broad and taught Peggy to fend for herself. She was instrumental in ensuring Peggy went to college and then on to grad school. Now, Peg gives her props as she continues to create her own firsts. From corporate worker to entrepreneur, she's one of the elite women who sits on a board of directors, and she's celebrating her latest first, her first grandchild, Robbie. Let's welcome Peggy to the first with Dr. Sandi. Welcome, Peggy.
Hi, Sandi.
Thank you for being on the first with Dr. Sandi Webster. Wanted to talk to you today because we have so much in common, and then still there's so much I still don't know.
Thanks, Sandi. Yes, I was the first woman, both sides. So this is not just my immediate family. This is both sides, my father's side and my mother's side. I was the first woman to ever graduate college. I had a cousin on my mother's side that was a man that went on to be a doctor, but I was the first one to graduate college as a woman. My brother beat me to the distinction of going to college. He graduated. So he was the first person besides this one man on my mother's extended family side that went to college, to graduate college.
Well, why were you the first woman? I mean, what did the women in your family do while you were the first? What were they stay-at-home moms? Were they in blue-collar workers like my family?
It was a mix. I think you had some stay-at-home. I think you had people that were poor, and college was not something accessible to them in those days. I think women were discouraged from going to college. I will say my mother had a college scholarship. So she went to Hunter High School, which was a very difficult high school to get into at the time she went. It was a girls' high school. And if you graduated, you automatically got a 4-year scholarship to Hunter College. She wound up, though, deciding to get married and started it, but then just never continued on it. And then had my oldest brother. So, and again, she said I was not encouraged to continue, and I was not interested in being a teacher or a nurse. Those were two professions I had no interest in. And that's why college didn't really appeal to her. She said what she should have been was an architect, but no one actually said you could be an architect. So anyway, bottom line is I was the first, and I have to say my mother was the one who really pushed to make sure I went to college.
And is that because she didn't go? Why she pushed?
Yes,
so for you to
she
go?
channeled all of her life's frustrations into me. And that is good and bad. But she was like, you will never, ever be dependent on a man for your income. You must be independent. You must be able to support yourself and your family always. This was just her mantra in life. And you will get a college education. And so I have to say she was the driving force. Now, because I was raised out of the womb with this woman saying, you must be independent, I obviously was right there with her to get the college degree. But I have to say my mother was this like crazy woman about me getting on my own 2 feet, and it was a good thing, really.
Yeah, I was the same with my family. We're blue-collar workers, and my grandmother is one of the first people that told me what your mom said.
You
It's
must
like
be independent.
you must be independent. You must know how to make your own living because those men might leave you one day with a
Exactly.
passel of kids, and you.
No, it was definitely a mantra that I grew up with, and it served me well because I really, I, even when I had my children, I knew I wanted to find some balance, but I never wanted to be without contributing my own paycheck to the family. And my husband was great and very supportive of it, but I just knew that I had to always earn a living as well.
Yeah, that's me too. I felt like as if I had control over that, then I
Right.
have control over everything else.
Let's be let's be honest. You know, I don't think money is the be all and end all. I think there is a higher power, but if you have economic power, you have a lot more choices in life for you and your family.
Yeah, money,
So it,
like you said, it's not the be all and end all, but it's a
right,
necessity.
right.
You can't live without it in this world today.
Exactly. In any world, any
Yeah,
time, money has always been pretty important. And women normally were dependent on other people for it. And my mother never wanted me to be in that position. So thus I came out this militant feminist because my mother just was that was like my little girl stories growing up. And then you went on to be a successful
so
whatever.
good. Yeah. No, and did she think you should have your own business as well? Because she
Uh,
was the first, right? She was the first to have her own business.
I believe she was. She had a successful real estate. She started out selling real estate and was a salesperson, got her broker's degree, you know, her license, and then decided to open with encouragement from my dad. He supported her, I have to say.
Nice.
She opened her own real estate business in Long Island in New York, and had a great business. And then when she sold her business, she then went on to managing properties for a real estate investor for like till she was in her, I think, almost 80 years old. She was still
Right.
managing properties. So I have to say, she always, she was a very bright woman. I think she was frustrated by the fact that she kind of probably could have been more successful, but because she made choices early in her life that came back
Right.
to haunt her.
Right.
Um, but nonetheless, she was a pretty astute realtor and was a great role model for me that you can do this. So she was supportive. They were funny enough. When I graduated college, I got hired by, at the time it was New York Telephone, became AT&T,
Mhm.
and I got hired into the management training program. It was my grandmother said to me, "Well, you're going to have a job for life." Now, things really changed quickly after that,
Yeah.
but they were just excited that I had this great, like, you know, secure job.
I know.
And so, you know, I had a lot of pressure on me because of that statement. And then just the sort of the reinforcement from my family is like, you know, this is the best thing anyone could do is get a great management job like this. And over time, I realized I need to make some choices here.
Yeah, I think my family had the same mentality of just, we were raised to go to school and go to college and get that corporate job,
Right.
right? Even though my grandmother didn't think so. She thought I should have my own business. But my mom definitely, because she worked so hard, she's like, you got to get a good paying job, which is a corporate job.
Right.
And even when it wasn't a good paying job, to her, it was a great job. To me, I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting practically minimum wage. But it was with the Board of Ed. I think that was my first, real
corporate job.
Yeah. And she loved that. And then I left. I'm like, they're not paying me anything. They pay me nothing. And then when I went to Saks Fifth Avenue, that is great. Except it's retail and they pay nothing either.
Right.
But it's our vision of what's a great job is very different from their vision of a great job,
Right.
based on their lives.
So when I joined with New York Tel and AT&T, within 2 years, I was in this management program where it's a very competitive program. And then every 6 months you were evaluated and you were in or out. and you kept getting a raise with that. So at the end of 2 years, I was making a lot more than my father was making after
Right.
working. So
Right.
I had this incredible salary for a kid that was fairly out of college, and no one, I was kind of an anomaly in my family, right?
Right.
I'm the first woman to graduate college. I am now in this management training program. At the end of the 2 years, I wind up getting an assignment where I'm managing an office of 180 people, because I was in operator services and I had like 10 assistant managers reporting to me. Fantastic experience. And because they were unionized in those days, as a manager, I was compensated pretty well. So when I looked around, it was, so why would I ever leave this?
Right.
Except,
Right.
at the first 5-10 years, it was fine because I was learning, and then I moved into marketing at some point. But at some point, I was like, there has to be more than me just working for one company,
Right.
at least for me.
No, I felt the same way. I wanted to learn a lot of different things. And I found when I was in one company, I got pigeonholed. So
Right.
if you're a secretary, you're going to be a secretary for life, right? You just keep getting bigger secretarial positions. If you're in marketing, you kind of stay on the marketing track. And
Right.
what was good about Saks Fifth Avenue was I could move around a lot. And I was I think I was the first person in my family to have that kind of corporate job.
Right.
And I learned everything. I moved from department to department. Like, I love that, just learning new things. So I'm glad your mom instilled that in you, because you still have that knack for learning today.
Yes. Although in a slower pace, I'm enjoying the sale of the business and the being able to kind of figure out things I like to do.
Yeah.
And not have quite the same pressure. My children are grown, so it's just at a different stage in my life.
Yeah, I'm still
Although,
bored. I still get bored easily. So
well, my role in COVID was as a caregiver for a little cutie pie who was, just born, so or relatively, he was only 6 months old. So that was really fun and totally different from what I expected to do, but who knew about COVID, right? So that was a lot of fun to be able to have that opportunity, and not in a corporate way, but wow, enjoyed it immensely.
well, you had the first grandchild in your
Yes.
family too.
Yes. So that was a joy, and that is still a joy. So, and I'm also on a board. I don't think I put it down there, but I think I'm the first in my family to be on a board of directors.
Nice.
And I think I'm a first of a lot of women I know on a board of, on a
Yes,
paid for-profit board of directors.
you are. You are. I know very few, and I know that's one of my goals, is to really help diversify boards this coming year. I'm going to work on that. I just got offered for a board of director position, but it's not a paid one.
Right. I was, well, I think we were both on nonprofit boards over the years.
Yeah.
And I fell into this in a way. It's just in our quest to continually learn. I was in a class and I met the CEO of the company, and we just had a lot of connection about how to treat employees and the importance of them. And so when he had an opening, because they're an ESOP company, which means they're employee owned, and they have to have an independent board of directors. It's part of the rules. He thought of me and my marketing background. He thought would be a good addition to the board, because the financial, and they're a tech company, so they had the technical people and the people from consulting, which of course I also was from, but they didn't have someone with the marketing background. So I was a good addition, and primarily we connected because we had the same philosophy about the importance of employees and their development. So but it was interesting how it was through my quest to keep learning new things that I fell into this. And I'm glad I'm on it. It's a very good experience.
And what are the terms? I mean, how many, is it a year term that you have renewable?
It's kind of open-ended how long I'll be on it. the one thing about being on a board as opposed to being an employee or a CEO or a senior level person is you don't work every day in the business. So
Right.
just getting to understand the company takes some time and the culture. So if it was a 1-year term, you probably wouldn't provide that value
Exactly.
because you don't have, it's with deep understanding that you can really provide the strategic oversight because you're not an implementer. It's a
Right.
much different role than my old role when I was co-CEO with you of the consulting business, right?
Right.
I'm supposed to provide guidance and oversight, and I am in a fiduciary role. So I have an obligation to the best for the shareholders, but it's not like I'm implementing. I'm just supposed to provide input and oversight. So it's a very different role. And it
Yeah.
takes a while to get, especially if you were a doer and a CEO, it's putting on a different hat and it's learning how to be effective in that role.
Yeah, you're pretty much just an advisor.
You are. You're an advisor and a counselor. I have mentored people at the company. And that just seems to be one of the things in my so-called retirement now from owning the business,
You're a
I
professional
am a
Paid,
professional,
unpaid mentor.
an unpaid mentor. I do get a lot of phone calls from people that I have met all through my career. I still get phone calls all the time or random texts. I have an issue. Could I call you and talk to you about it? And I don't have any skin in the game. So it makes me more objective for them. So I think
Right.
that's why they're seeking me out.
I think a lot of times because you're probably one of the first women they know who have started the business, who's grown their business, you scaled the business, and then sold the business. Like you've been through all the different phases. And I find I get that because, I mean, we did it together, but
Right.
I get that all the time, especially as an African American woman,
Right.
that I get a ton of calls with that. And it's always my pleasure to help. But this is where we realize that we're impacting other people, other business owners, especially women business owners. And that's why it's important for me to be on a board and to be on a diverse board, because a lot of the boards are not diverse.
Right.
And I would love to have that so that I can show other business owners that they too can do that.
And it's funny you bring up that because I've been approached by headhunters and who are in a paid position to find board members.
Yes.
And I have brought up that I know someone who's diverse candidate that would be really good. And the first question they asked me, well, are they on a paid board now?
Yeah.
And I always chuckle because I'm like, we are never as a society going to change the numbers.
Exactly.
If the only way you can get on a board is because you've been on a board. So if you want a diverse board, but the numbers for diversity are appalling, we're never going to increase the percentage.
Exactly.
And then they kind of, when I confront them with that, I get a lot of, we'll look at it. And I'm like, but you said the first most important thing is to the head board experience.
Right.
And I'm like, you're never going to change the numbers. So it's a mindset change. And I guess if companies and constituents demand it, make it impacting to the wallet.
Yes.
Right. That'll change it. That will probably change it more quickly. However, on the other hand, you want to make sure that people are prepared if they are going to step into a board position, what the responsibility is and the risk, because if you're
Absolutely.
a fiduciary, you're responsible. So you have to make sure that there is indemnification for you as a board member, that they have director and officer's insurance policy, so you're protected, because there are risks to it as well. And
there's great training. There are great training programs. Like I took the Women on Board course, which is a full course, and now they're called 50-50 Women on Board because they're trying to get women on board by 2050.
Okay.
And they met their quota of getting, women, the 20,000 women on boards, I think it was. But now they're really looking at getting diverse,
boards.
Diverse boards, and they're pushing it, writing to Congress people, really doing a lot of things to move that forward. And I like that because the course gave you a full orientation of what is needed, not just to be on a board, but
Right.
when you're on a board, all the responsibilities of a board. And
Right.
I just, this company that asked me to be on their board of directors, the nonprofit, they gave a full orientation ahead of time, which I thought was great, on what it takes to be on a board. Like, we had 1-hour sessions of board building, and then afterwards, and now you know what it takes to be on a board. Would you like to be on our board? So that's interesting that they did it that way, because
Right.
by the time they ask you, you can't say, no, I had no clue I'd have to do this. And it was a great thing to do, for me anyway, to see that. So, let's go back to, you also had the first in graduate degrees, right?
Yes. Yep.
So where did you go to school for your graduate?
I went to St. John's University in Jamaica, Queens. And I went at night. I worked full time for AT&T. And I went at night. In those days, they had a very generous tuition reimbursement program. So it took me 3 years, but I got my master's in business, MBA in finance, and which was good because my undergraduate was more liberal artsy, and from the College of Mount St. Vincent. So it was a building block. So I went to college. I did very well in college in my undergraduate, and I didn't have a lot of self-confidence always about things. Even though I had this mom who was, you must go on, you must go on. I personally didn't always believe in myself. And so the first building block was I was very successful in my undergraduate, graduated with honors. I did well. I got a great job interviews as a result of that. I was in their student government, something I didn't think I would do. So there were things that started to make me realize I had some skills here.
Right.
Then I was successful in my career. I got promoted. I was in this very competitive management training program, and I did well there. So then I went to graduate school. Now, I could have pushed for other things. I still didn't have complete self-confidence in my ability to do really well at a top. So I went to St. John's, and then I really did even better in my graduate degree than I did in my undergraduate. So I started to say, okay, maybe, and I had a boss at the time who was probably my favorite boss, Jack was his name, who really believed in me. And he believed in my intellectual capabilities. So he was a big cheerleader. And so when someone believes in you, and that instills confidence. And so then you are more successful because you just have this self-confidence.
Yeah.
So it was another building block in my, okay, I'm not such an ordinary person. And so I just continued to build on my confidence on what I was capable of. And same in my work life. When I took this job in marketing, which was my first role in marketing, I became a product manager for international services at AT&T. I had been in government affairs for a year or two, so I had a lot of knowledge of tariffs. And believe it or not, in those days, it was still quasi-regulated. Right. So my knowledge of that really put me ahead of my peers, because anytime you wanted to change pricing, you had to go through the regulatory bodies to do that. So it kind of set me apart from my peers. And then I was put in a position to start, somebody left, so I was filling in for them. So and then one thing led to another. They kept adding to my responsibilities, and I got promoted again. And I started to have this huge team, and we kicked off multicultural marketing, and it had not been done there before. We had pockets of it, but we had this enormous organization that I built actually, that really looked at marketing to consumers the way they wanted to be marketed to. And so that gave me confidence that, I can lead a pretty large team here.
Yes.
And it wasn't charted waters. This was all uncharted, and I could figure it out. And I was kind of ahead of, like, even some of my bosses on some of the thinking. And it wasn't not tooting my own horn here.
And you should
Although
toot your own
I
horn.
should, but that's just such a woman thing not to want to. But it
Yes.
really, everything was a stepping stone to giving me greater confidence and ultimately to starting the business.
Do you think you would have started the business if you hadn't taken those steps?
No, I think the security, remember I had this, my grandmother saying to me, you have a job for life. So that aspect of making a pretty nice salary with benefits was, and leaving that to go to starting a business, if I hadn't built up the confidence. And then by the time 9/11 happened and all of that, when we started the business, I don't think I would have had the guts to say, even to my husband, hey, I'm not going to look for a new job now that I've lost my job here.
Yeah.
At American Express. I'm going to go and start a business. And Amex was great to us. I mean, they gave us a nice package. They couldn't have been better.
Yeah.
And it was a crazy time for them. But I don't think, if I didn't have all these stepping stones and feeling that I could do this, because let's face it, you can read all the books you want about starting a business, but it's like riding a bike. It's like, I guess, learning to fly a plane. Until you do it, you don't really know.
No.
And I think if I knew everything, maybe I wouldn't have, because it is like what do we used to call it? The wild mouse ride. You know, you're careening around corners and there's always something thrown your way and you better be nimble and quick to succeed.
This is a time, it was good to be dumb about certain things.
Yes. But it was a great experience, and the learning in that was geometric. Everything up to that time was nothing to running a business and what you have to know how to do.
Correct.
But all those building blocks, all those, whether it was the academics or the practice, all of that came and was really important to building the business. So
I found that too. Just the people management side of it. When you're a consultant and you have your own business, right? It's just you.
Right.
You're on this treadmill of finding a gig, then doing the gig, then finding a gig. But when you have people that you really have to not tell what to do, but encourage them and inspire them. And even if your business is not going well, you have to still inspire them to keep working for you. And it's hard. It's harder than people say until you actually do it. And if I didn't have previous experience in the corporate world, managing people, learning how to do their appraisals, learning how to speak to them, all those little things just came full circle when we got the business and made it easier, quite frankly.
Well, I will say that all of that corporate training was incredibly important in providing us with the foundation to be able to build our own business. I do think just the way you approach solving problems, handling clients, all of that was things we learned going into it. However, it still didn't necessarily you don't know what it's like to own a business till you have to make that payroll. And with your money. And when the world is falling apart, we didn't have to go through COVID, but we went through the remnants after 9/11, but we went through the financial implosion in 2008. So
but we came out ahead. We came out of that. Both of those, we got through it. And so we learned crisis management and grew.
Right.
Yes.
And while I'm glad I didn't own a business during COVID, I'm sure we would have figured out a way to thrive through that too, as
absolutely pivot,
because
pivot would have been something else.
Yes. But so being the first does have its downsides in a way sometimes, because people do look to you as a role model, or people that maybe in your circle and you might not even know it, but they start feeling like pressure to follow you. I had one family member
less than you.
Right. I had one family member who was a cousin who shared that her dad said, "Why can't you be more like Peggy?" And I felt terrible about that, because that's, why can't you be like her? Because she can't be like, she's her, and she had lots of gifts. And I think sometimes women don't feel as confident about being successful and taking risks
True.
because of just how you raised. And she didn't have a mom that lectured her every day, 24/7, that you must be independent.
I swear to you, I think that is so important to have someone encouraging you and telling you, even when you're falling on your face, that telling you, you can do it, you can do it.
Right. And you better do it. Or
Yes.
in the case of my mother, is like, you better do it.
It's my mom. Like, you have to go to college. I don't care how long it takes you. I don't care how much it costs. Like, you have to go to college. Yes,
Right.
you have to get a decent job, and you have to learn how to take care of yourself. And
Well,
I, in turn, became my mom at some point. And
don't we all? Don't we all?
we that same advice to younger people, whether there are kids or not. We just automatically assume, well, the work for me, this is what you need to do to be independent. And I think the next generation is better off for it. Is Emily, do you think Emily followed in your footsteps, or was she impacted by the fact that she saw you working and having your own business and doing your own thing?
I think not only Emily, Robbie, believe it or not, my son also saw that. And I think it's impacted the way he and his wife, Brittany, relate, because he understands, he's really good about helping.
That's great.
Because he saw that we were a partnership, my husband and I, Rob and I. And for Emily, for sure, she had a friend who was incredibly bright girl, who said, I'm only going to do this till I can get married, and then I'm not. And Emily came home horrified, retelling this story to me. I was like, yes, and this was still while she was in high school, and she was horrified. She goes,
Yeah.
I'm not going through all this education. So not that it's a choice if you want to stay home, but for this young girl who was on the path to be like an engineer, doctor,
Right.
whatever,
Right.
incredibly gifted, saying, I just want to do this till I can get married and be home. Just to her, it was horrifying. I'm not judging anybody who chooses that path, by the way, but I just saw that Emily realizes that having a career is, being successful in your own right is important for you as a person. And
I think our kids learn that,
well, they saw it.
Not just the children, right? It's their friends saw that too.
Right.
And their friends in turn look at you or their parents and say, oh, this is what they just take it for granted. This is what I'm supposed to do because that's what I'm mimicking.
Right.
This is what I saw. And we didn't have that. So I think it is very impactful to the next generation to mimic us, or the behaviors or the qualities that they saw in us, because we weren't able to do that. We learned on our own, right? Being first to go
Well,
out.
I have to say, probably much like your grandmother was, my grandmother was a suffragette. So I think my daughter comes by this honestly, because it's generation. So even though my grandmother, she did work as a telephone operator till she got married, but she was a suffragette and went to, she was out marching for women's rights. And then my mother was, you must be independent. Like, so she's had all of these generations of strong women saying, we deserve better.
Me too. My grandma always worked.
Right.
Always worked. I think by the time I knew her, because she worked and had kids late in life, which was uncommon in those days.
Right.
And because of that, she just automatically said, do the things you need to do before you have kids, if you possibly can. And if you do have kids, you should still work. I mean, she even worked inside the home, just having her own little baking cakes and doing different things. But I think she always felt like, I've got to have some money in my pocket, no matter how old I am. I've got to do my stuff.
Well, that gets back to that comment, right? Like, I'm not saying money's, and I don't believe that, but not having it.
Power.
but you don't have power if you have no economic power. It's very hard to have power in this world without
We've
having
seen
money.
that with women not leaving spouses because they have
Of
no
money.
of their own, right? They're not independent. So I totally get that.
It's part of building who you are as a person, is just having the freedom, the economic empowerment to be able to choose what you want to do. And that might be to choose not to work for a period of time. And that's okay.
Yes.
If it's a choice. It's when it's not a
Right.
choice and you're, feeling the pressures of being a mom, supporting, it's a very difficult time. So, being the first, yeah, I'm proud of being the first. And I'm glad that I'm a role model to not only my children, but it's funny, we have a pretty large extended family, and a lot of the cousins, the young girls, come to me because I was the aunt that worked always through their career, and they're in the situation,
Right.
debating what they should do and how they should do it. So I get in that, mentoring, it extends to family members too. And it's rewarding when I can help provide guidance. There's no
Yes.
right or wrong answer to any of this, but it's nice to be able to help people. And that's kind of my mission now, is to take what I've learned and my talents and put it to spend more time on just doing sort of philanthropy
Giving
as
back.
much as and giving back, because I've been really blessed and I've had a great run with things. So
Yes,
there's a
we
lot
have.
I've learned. I look back at what we accomplished, Sandy. I still can't believe we did it. I remember our little class that we took.
Not only did we do it, it's still continuing. Our legacy is still continuing. The
And
company
thriving.
still is doing really well, even through COVID, right?
Right.
And so the foundation that we gave and left is very solid.
Right. And we were on where our strategy to go more into data science was what we wanted to do.
On
And
target.
so
On target.
it was on target. So I feel really good about that, and that we created all those jobs, high paying, good
Yes.
jobs for a lot of
Yes.
women, a lot of minorities. So
Yes.
I feel really good about that.
I do too.
And it's hard to believe we did it, though, from when we started, Sandy, in that little sitting down and saying, we're going to build this company, and being in
But
that
we
room
said
that
we would. We said
Yes.
we would. We told those guys we would, and they didn't believe us.
Right. Wouldn't you love to get them back in the room again and just say, hey, remember when you said this is not possible? You cannot do this. Is never going to work. That, hey, we did it.
That in itself is a great lesson. Like, people will tell you things, and it's up to you to make the decision on whether or not what they're telling you is really what you feel you're capable of doing. Because there are a lot of people out there that probably might be listening to this podcast, Peggy, that somebody told them, why are you doing that? And they just said, oh, nobody, maybe I shouldn't. They just didn't move forward, even though they're gut, and some of them with capabilities. Or they might have a spouse who's like, oh no, that's not a good paying job. You're going to be out of work until. I've heard that story so many times. So kudos to us.
Yes, and more to
dream.
Right, which we did, and now I have to figure out how I really create the next dream from what I've done.
Yes.
And that's what I'm researching. I'm still trying to figure that out. I think my mother's passing right when I was leaving the business. And then COVID kind of slowed me in what I'm doing in some ways. But then, of course, I got to take care of the grandchild. So that was actually a real big plus for me, and something I wouldn't have planned necessarily the way it worked out. But boy, was that fun, and it is fun.
Yeah.
So so now I just have to figure out exactly how I do the next step while enjoying my time in Florida in the winter.
We on the next WPO Next, we talked about that topic. Like, how do you prepare for your next, right? Do you decide it while you still have the company, or is it something that after you leave, you kind of mull through and take time. I think that would make a great topic for a conversation
Next.
about our next. Yes. How do we determine, what are we passionate? Are we doing the things we're passionate about now that we have the time? Our money, do we have the money? We might be passionate and not
Right.
have the money, or both, right?
Well, my family makes fun of me now because they remember me when I had the business. And now they're like, oh, she's retired. She's going to go out and, take a walk, maybe get a manicure. So there's some joking because they remember the hard charging Peg in the olden
Yes.
days. And now I'm the relaxed, well, let me see what I'll do here. So it's just interesting. And I didn't have it figured out. It might have been nice, but it's also nice to have just a blank page and
time.
And so I've been doing things. I'm taking Italian lessons. I've cooked a lot of Julia Child's recipes while in COVID. I really have done things that I always like to do. I traveled a lot until COVID happened. And I want to get back to traveling. But
Yes, me too. I was looking at the Maldives, Peg.
Okay.
Oh my God. I got this offer that was amazing from TravelZoo.
Okay.
Because they're trying to, everybody's
entice you, right?
So I don't have to use it till 2023. And I'm like, I am on this verge of buying it just to start traveling again and doing.
Well, I can't wait. What I probably will travel more in the United States first because I just don't want to get stuck in a lockdown in another country.
And I also realized I don't travel in the US as much as I travel outside of the US.
Right. And there's a lot to see. Having gone to some of the national parks right before COVID, like in 19, I'm like, wow, there's so much beauty in this country.
It is.
So I'm vaccinated, so I feel pretty good about being able to go out and travel.
And that feels so good too, just to be vaccinated and move around.
But now I don't want to go someplace and then find out they're shutting down the borders and I'm stuck there.
That's the concern, is really the border, because I saw where they were actually quarantining you for a day. They give you a COVID test on site in the hotel.
Right.
You're in this luxurious quarantine. Let me tell you, if I want to be quarantined, that's the quarantine I want to have. Right. And then after your test comes back and you're negative, they move you over to be able to mingle with people. Right. Because everyone's been tested and negative. So I think that should be new for hotels to do.
Right. Well, we'll see. But there's a lot of people that think it's an infringement on your rights.
Yes.
That the share if they're vaccinated or not. I'm just looking to stay healthy. So, and I've always been pro-vaccines. So I had no hesitation.
My dad learned the hard
Couldn't
way.
wait to get it. Couldn't wait to get my Moderna
vaccine.
vaccine.
My dad learned the hard way. He didn't want to get vaccinated, and now he got COVID, and he's like, why didn't you force me to get vaccinated?
Right. So So we're all vaccinated, except for the little guy because he's not old enough yet. But I'm happy. At least is it perfect? No, but it gives you some comfort to know that
it does.
Right.
Really,
it definitely does. So anyway, that's my next is still an evolving thing, but being first gave me the tools to kind of build the life I wanted to lead and the confidence to be able to execute it, if that makes sense.
No, that is so awesome, Peggy. It's a great note to end on. I don't know what my next is, because I've not, unlike you, I've continued
to work
doing things because and I enjoy it. I enjoy the things that I'm doing, like this podcast. I'm able to just take time to talk to a lot of different people and to share knowledge as well, because this is part of education now. These podcasts are educational things that we learn how to do.
That's right.
So thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Sandy.
I'm sure I'll drag you back in some other capacity that we have, but much appreciated.
We'll have to do the untold story.
Yes. Yes. So go have a great day, and
Thank
I
you.
will talk to you.
All right, Sandy, thank you so much.
This is Dr. Sandi. Thank you so much for sharing your journey on the first, where no two stories are alike, even if the circumstances are similar. Let this discussion serve as inspiration for others to show what's possible, and more importantly, to produce seconds and thirds.